Welcome to Real Horror Stories, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. This channel is dedicated to unearthing the darkest corners of humanity, the true stories that are more often terrifying than fiction. We delve into the chilling accounts of true crime, unsolved mysteries, and alleged real-life horror, with one goal in mind: to reveal the grim truth behind the mask of normality. Here, we explore the minds of those who walk among us, people who appear ordinary, even respected, but conceal horrific secrets beneath the surface. Our content isn't for the faint of heart, and viewer discretion is advised. In this episode, we explore the twisted double lives of three of the most notorious killers in American history: John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, and Dennis Rader. These men were not monsters lurking in the shadows. They were husbands, fathers, and community leaders. But behind their facades of normality lurked unthinkable brutality. John Wayne Gacy, a beloved figure in his neighborhood, Gacy was a businessman, party clown, and a political activist. But beneath the surface, he was a sadistic murderer who lured young boys to their deaths. Ted Bundy, charming, charismatic, and intelligent, Bundy used his good looks and charm to lure women to their deaths, earning him public admiration while he operated in the shadows as a ruthless predator. Dennis Rader, BTK. A family man and a church leader, Rader maintained a veneer of suburban respectability, while secretly documenting and enjoying his reign of terror as the bind, torture, and kill murderer. Each of these men hid in plain sight, seamlessly blending into their communities, while committing some of the most brutal and horrifying crimes imaginable. In this countdown, we reveal the chilling contradictions between their public personas and the atrocities that they committed behind closed doors. As we dive into these cases, we aim to explore how these killers use their social standing as a shield, deflecting suspicion while leaving behind a trail of destruction. The horror doesn't lie in their actions alone, but in the realization that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they wear the face of a friend, a neighbor, and a respected leader. John Wayne Gacy, a man who wore many masks, both literally and figuratively. To his community in suburban Chicago, he was the epitome of a successful, respected citizen, a local businessman, a political activist, and a man who often dressed up as, quote, Pogo the Clown to entertain children at charity events. Behind the colorful makeup and smiles, though, Gacy harbored one of the most twisted and horrifying secrets in American criminal history. Gacy's outward appearance was a carefully constructed lie. Beneath his charm and his role as a community man, he was responsible for one of the most grotesque series of crimes the world has ever known. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy lured at least 33 young boys and men into his home. He promised them jobs, friendship, and simply invited them in under the guise of trust. Once inside, Gacy's home became a chamber of horrors. His victims, many of whom were between the ages of 14 and 21, were brutally sexually assaulted, tortured, and murdered. Gacy would often trick his victims into allowing him to handcuff them under the pretense of showing them a magic trick. Once restrained, he would unleash his full, sadistic, twisted nature. He buried 26 of his victims in the crawlspace beneath his house. Others were discarded in nearby rivers when his basement ran out of room. All the while, Gacy continued to live his life as a respected figure, hosting neighborhood barbecues, attending local events, and even taking photos with prominent politicians. His crimes went undetected for years. The community saw a friendly man, a local hero, but the truth was far more sinister. Gacy himself admitted to being two people: a public persona of charm and good humor, and a private, sadistic side that took pleasure in torturing and killing his victims. When asked how he could be so deceitful, Gacy replied, "I don't remember killing anyone, but if I did, they were just objects." Gacy's reign of terror finally ended in December 1978, when a 15-year-old boy named Robert Peast went missing. Peast was last seen speaking with Gacy about a potential job offer. This led police to investigate Gacy's home, where they uncovered the horrifying truth, one that had been buried, literally, for years. In 1980, Gacy was convicted of 33 counts of murder, the largest number attributed to any one individual in U.S. history at the time. He was sentenced to death and was executed by lethal injection in 1994.
I've never spoken to anybody about this.
Ted Bundy. The name alone sends shivers down the spine. A man whose charm, intelligence, and good looks captivated the public while he committed some of the most brutal murders in American history. He was a serial killer no one suspected, and his ability to manipulate not just his victims, but the justice system and the media makes him one of the most dangerous criminals of all time. Bundy was a master manipulator, using his handsome appearance and smooth-talking demeanor to create an image of a well-adjusted, likable young man. He was a law student, politically active, and even volunteered at a crisis hotline. But beneath that polished exterior was a sadistic predator who preyed on young women. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy embarked on a horrifying spree of abductions, assaults, and murders. His victims were mostly young, attractive women in their teens and 20s, and he lured them into his trap by feigning injury, asking for help, or simply relying on his magnetic charm. Bundy was the wolf in sheep's clothing, exploiting the trust and kindness of those around him. His modus operandi was as chilling as it was effective. He often approached women in public places, pretending to be injured and asking for help with simple tasks like carrying books or loading items into his car. Once they were close enough, Bundy would overpower them, knock them unconscious, and take them to remote locations where he tortured and murdered them. The number of women who fell victim to Bundy is staggering. Estimates suggest he murdered at least 30 women, though the true count may never be known. His ability to travel across states, changing his appearance and adopting new identities, made him nearly impossible to track. From Washington to Utah, Colorado to Florida, Bundy left a trail of terror wherever he went. Bundy's arrogance would ultimately be his downfall. In 1975, he was arrested for the kidnapping of Carol Daranche, one of the few women to survive his attacks. But even after his arrest, Bundy used his charm and intelligence to manipulate the legal system. Representing himself in court, Bundy famously escaped custody twice, first by jumping from a courthouse window, and later by sawing through the ceiling of his jail cell. While on the run in 1978, Bundy committed his most infamous crime, the brutal attack at Florida State University's Chi Omega sorority house. In one night of unspeakable horror, he bludgeoned 2 women to death and severely injured 2 others, leaving a scene of bloodshed that shocked the nation. Even as his crimes became more brazen, Bundy maintained a terrifying ability to control public perception. Many people simply couldn't believe that this charming, articulate man could be capable of such savagery. In fact, during his trial, Bundy became something of a media sensation, with women flocking to the courtroom to catch a glimpse of the man who had killed so many. But Bundy's charm was only a facade, masking a deep, sadistic desire for control and power. He reveled in the fear and pain he caused, and his confidence in his ability to outsmart everyone, from law enforcement to his own defense team, was as dangerous as his physical brutality. Ted Bundy's reign of terror finally came to an end in 1989, when he was executed in the electric chair after being convicted of multiple murders. Even in his final moments, Bundy maintained the chilling duality that had defined his life, at once appearing repentant while never fully admitting the true extent of his crimes. Ted Bundy was more than just a murderer. He was a master of deception, hiding in plain sight and using society's expectations against itself. Dennis Rader, known by his self-given moniker BTK, which stood for Bind, Torture, Kill. For 3 decades, Rader lived a seemingly normal life as a family man, church leader, and a respected member of his Kansas community. Yet, behind this mask of suburban respectability lurked one of the most methodical and sadistic serial killers in history. Rader's case is particularly chilling because of how successfully he hid his dark desires behind an outwardly wholesome persona. Married with children, Rader was a Boy Scout leader and president of his local church council. To his neighbors, he was the picture of stability and decency. But the man they knew was a carefully crafted illusion. Beneath the surface, Rader was a cold, calculating predator who took pleasure in terrorizing and murdering his victims. Rader began his killing spree in 1974, targeting innocent people in their home. His first known victims were the Otero family, 2 parents and 2 young children, whom he bound, tortured, and murdered in cold blood. Rader meticulously planned these attacks, stalking his victims, studying their routines, and breaking into their homes to carry out his sadistic fantasies. Rader didn't stop with the Oteros. Over the next 30 years, he would claim at least 10 more lives, leaving behind a legacy of fear that haunted the Wichita community for decades. His killings were marked by a disturbing consistency. He would bind his victims, torture them in unimaginable ways, and ultimately kill them, often leaving clues for police to find. But perhaps even more disturbing than the crimes themselves was Rader's hunger for recognition. Rader craved attention. He taunted law enforcement and the media with cryptic letters, sending detailed descriptions of his murders and mocking their inability to catch him. In these letters, he gleefully referred to himself as BTK, a name that would become infamous across the country. Rader's need for notoriety was as insatiable as his desire to kill. For him, the thrill wasn't just in the act, it was in the knowledge that he was outsmarting the police and holding an entire community in fear. Despite his brutal crimes, Rader managed to evade capture for decades, seamlessly blending into the fabric of his community. He raised a family, attended church on Sunday, and appeared to be the average man. But in private, Rader meticulously documented his crimes, keeping detailed journals of his murders and even sketching his sadistic fantasies. For years, the BTK killer seemed untouchable. But in 2004, after a long period of silence, Rader resurfaced. Unable to resist the lure of attention, he began sending letters to the media again, reigniting the investigation into his identity. In a fateful mistake, Rader sent a floppy disk to the police, believing it could not be traced. But investigators were able to recover metadata from the disk, leading them straight to Dennis Rader, a church council president living in Park City, Kansas. When police arrested Rader in 2005, the community was stunned. The man they had trusted for years, the same man who gave sermons at church and led Boy Scout meetings, was revealed to be the BTK killer. Rader confessed in chilling detail to his crimes, showing no remorse as he recounted the horror he inflicted on his victims. He described his killings as projects, each meticulously planned and executed, each an opportunity to fulfill his dark desires for power and control. In 2005, Dennis Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. Even in his final moments of freedom, Rader remained disturbingly composed, describing his murders in the same way one might discuss a routine task. His ability to compartmentalize his life, acting as a loving father and devoted church leader by day, and a sadistic killer by night, continues to haunt those who knew him. John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader. 3 men who lived double lives, fooling everyone around them while committing some of the most heinous crimes in history. They each hid behind masks of normalcy, charm, and respectability, but their true nature was nothing short of monstrous. These stories force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones we trust the most. But what drives individuals like Gacy, Bundy, and Rader to live such horrifying double lives? Were they born evil, or did something in their past set them on this dark path? And how did they manage to fool so many people for so long? Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think? How do you interpret the actions of these notorious killers? Do you believe there were warning signs that were missed? Or were they simply master manipulators beyond anyone's suspicion? What do you believe makes a person capable of such malevolent brutality? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this episode insightful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode of Real Horror Stories. Until next time, stay vigilant and remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who seem the most normal.